All right, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Monday. Got Labor Day here upon us. September 1st, 2025 is the date. 11:20 a.m. That's California time here. Going to start off real quick with space weather activity, where tonight, if you are an Aurora lover, Aurora watcher, we got the potential for seeing that tonight. Check out the detailed forecast here from solarham.com. This is going to be the potential G3 class storm out here tonight. It does look like it's not showing the G3 level, although it is expected to be up around that G3 maximum level between 06 and 09 UTC time. So that will be obviously much later tonight. And technically anytime there, once it gets dark here and you have clear skies, you could be seeing the auroras out here. This is just the KP index up around the 6. G3 would bring this line down a little bit more across central Oregon and maybe even the portions of Kansas out there. And of course, that's all dependent on the certain space weather conditions out there. But we'll check back on that a little bit later on this evening. But just wanted to mention that if you guys are Aurora fans out there. All right, let's take a look here at earthquake activity overnight. Still seeing some aftershock sequences out here where that 6.0 struck in Afghanistan. Did quite a bit of damage out there. Closely in proximity here to some heavily populated areas there. And this is a very shallow earthquake from yesterday. So that just added to the damage and the strength out there of that earthquake that struck yesterday. A number of aftershocks there up in the 4 and 5 range. I don't see any signs of that being any foreshock activity. It looks like just a typical aftershock sequence there from a 6-pointer. Some newer activity up here around the Alaska area this morning as well. 4.7 well southeast there of the Old Harbor, Alaska area. This is along the Aleutian Trench here. Got a little cluster going on, it looks like. Quite a few 3s. 4s, and it looks like it started off here with a 5-pointer about 4 o'clock this morning. Quickly followed up here by that 4.7, so kind of watching this area closely. Now, the 7-pointer that struck out here last July, I believe was roughly in that same region. Actually, I believe that was just over here a little bit around the Sand Point area. Notice the aftershock sequences there from the 7-pointer. This is only covering a fraction and not including the 7-pointer that struck out there in July. But a decent amount of earthquake activity there. Looks like now in a quiet zone out here, relatively quiet, we're getting some newer activity. Notice some earthquake activity back prior to the subduction zone here in the last 30 days. It's going to be these little cluster of quakes. And now we got some earthquake activity right there at the subduction zone interface. That's kicking up there in a 5.0 magnitude range and a 4.7. Thinking here, when we got to watch that could be some foreshock activity. The Pacific Plate here has been super, super active, with that 7-pointer, and then a bunch of activity over here. The Kamchatka 8.8 last July. That's over across a different subduction zone, but it's still part of the plate boundary here between the North American and the Pacific Plate. A lot of movement here with that shifting there of the Pacific Plate, moving off to the northwest here. This is the Pacific Plate in the yellow, squeezing up and actually subducting here underneath the North American Plate, which is in the brown color. A lot of pressure going on up here in the last couple months. We've seen a lot of large earthquake activity as well. General plate stress movement here to the northwest. It does look like we're starting to add further strain back here as expected. I was thinking that maybe that would increase movement down here across Japan, which we've seen off and on, but it does look like it's squeezing this area here where it's roughly 60 mm per year, which is pretty decent there for stress accumulation, slip accumulation here. I want to go back here real quick and see where that 8-pointer struck. Remember back in 2021? So we'll just go back here a little bit to 2020 and take a look here. I'm wondering if it could be due here for some large earthquake activity along this section of the Aleutian Trench. That should cover it right there. Don't want to cover too much because I got 4.5 here and above. Which is going to be a number. Obviously, 5 years of earthquake activity going to show up here on the map. Okay, I just want to see where that 8-pointer is at. 8.2. All right, the 8.2 was a little bit further west here. That was back in 2021. A decent segment here ruptured, but the newer activity is back here across this quiet zone. This portion here of the Gulf of Alaska, and of course it is a major subduction zone here. But look at that, some newer activity this morning. It does look like back in 2022 we had a 4.5, roughly in that same zone, but this is lacking some decent earthquake activity up here. The last super big event, I believe, was that 9-pointer back in 1964 or so. Let's take a look here real quick. Let's revise that and see what we got. I just want to pull up 7.0 is good. And let's just go back and see where we're at. Yeah, that'll work. Actually, we'll go just north a little bit more. And we'll take a look at this here real quick, see what we got. So there's a 9.2 earthquake. That was definitely well inland and associated with a strain here of the subduction zone. But that was actually a decent distance inland here for that 9.2. But technically anywhere out here along the subduction zone is capable of producing a 9-pointer. Back in 1946, there was a 8.6, much further out to the west here along the Aleutian Trench. 8.2 within that same zone as well. 8.2, 2021. Those are pretty much back-to-back earthquakes there in the same region. What's concerning here, it's a lack of earthquake activity historically, large movement. Yes, that 9-pointer well up north and associated with the subduction zone here, but technically, what do we got here? 7.9, 1900. That's a long time ago there. 1906 for a 7-pointer. This is a 7.9 now. This is a little concerning here, excuse me, because of the placement of that 7.9 back in 2018, just prior to the subduction zone. I'm thinking this area here where we're seeing our newer activity could be getting ready to see a mega quake out here, just with the amount of time that's passed here between some of these larger events in the area, and technically no historical data out here along that subduction zone. Yeah, that's not even that's a big earthquake, but it's not anything as far as what can actually take place out here. See that? Absence of really anything out in this zone. Over here, further in the Gulf of Alaska, got some large activity as well. Looks like a lot of time has passed over here. 8.2, 1899. There's 7.1, 7.8, 7.8. Somewhat recent out here in the Gulf, but that's along this shear zone. So watch this area closely here, folks. You know, it's been kind of a interesting year with large events here. And, we were somewhat quiet for 4 years since our last 8-pointer back in 2021. We actually had 3 of them this year. It's not out of the question that we could see some more 8s, maybe even a 9-pointer. Our last 9-pointer was back in 2011 there in Japan. Those are, kind of a toss-up there. You could see them within a few years of each other, or it could be decades. But watch this area right here, and the reason why is just those models I just showed you here. They're lacking recent historical large earthquake activity. And at the slip rate of at least 60 mm per year in this zone, and it gets higher as you go across here, but we've had so much adjustment here along this area of the plate boundary that it makes sense that things are going to strain back here as the plate further, moves off to the northwest. So increasing pressure out here where that earthquake activity now is taking place. These could very well be foreshocks. We will watch this closely. So far, the latest quake, though, of 5.0. It is right there on the subduction zone, where, a lot of times that's where the big ones happen. Nothing really going on here yet, but we'll watch that. Going to be keeping a close eye on that. Further inland into Alaska, not a whole lot going on there as far as 2.5 and above goes, but, just that area down there a little concerning. Pacific Northwest, a couple earthquakes there from yesterday. Nothing showing up on the map yet, and it probably, I mean, it's still a holiday, right? USGS is probably taking the day off, I would think, unless something big comes in out here. Really nothing going on across Mount Rainier. We will double check that, though. Oh, let's see here. Let's go back. I got so many windows open here today. Let's go over here to the trimmer map. And we'll check this out. This is from yesterday, by the way. We had 415 epicenters of tremor. That's a decent amount, and it's spread out across the northern end and the southern end of the Cascadia. So far as Mount Rainier goes, the volcanic seismograph stations here shows us that, let's see here, a couple earthquakes. That's definitely an earthquake. It's not the wind blowing. I guarantee you an ice quake's not going to look like that. Ice quakes are more of a well-defined, thin, very thin type of line here, maybe something like that. We see something like that at Yellowstone in the wintertime, all the ice building up. But there is what looks like a number of smaller quakes out there. Nothing big, no elevated uptick. For Mount St. Helens here, went back to Mount Rainier. Here we go. It's like, wow, that looks identical. All right, Mount St. Helens here up at the Dome region. Got still what looks like some earthquake activity out here. I'm not for sure exactly what those are. They almost look like earthquake activity, but at a distance from this region, or those may be some deep quakes underneath the area. But there is a couple localized events right here, maybe a couple more. This big old squiggly line that you see is actually from the let me see. Let me go back. So look at the timestamp here, right, for that 5-pointer. About 4 o'clock in the morning. 4 o'clock in the morning would match this right here. That squiggly line. So that's actually a 5-pointer showing up quite nicely. And the S waves almost looks like a bigger quake, but I think because of the proximity here from Washington to the Aleutian Trench there, it's pretty close. But that's what the 5-pointer and the 4.7 did this morning. Kind of shaking that seismograph station there in Washington quite nicely, but look at those waves. This is a very sensitive equipment, a very sensitive seismograph station here. They have it yanked up in terms of the amplitude readings, which is good because they are able to see, you know, for one, the distant quake, but also maybe quakes that are happening down below the area, deeper into the Mount St. Helens region. Those do look like some deeper quakes in the area. Let's see what we got for the previous day. Couple localized events. Those are definitely earthquakes localized. There's a 2.8 near Boise. I believe it's that darker one there. Not this one. But there's a handful of earthquakes out there across Mount St. Helens as well. And they're reporting, well, nothing today. A couple small ones from yesterday. So just kind of watch that. Nothing going on in Northern California. All right. Clear Lake Volcanic Field up there. That's just hydrothermal plants kicking up. Bay Area got some movement. Well, south of the Bay Area, we got a little cluster going on here. Look at these sequence of events here on the San Andreas Fault. Pretty much spread out equally across this area. Now, this is a creeping section here. Goes down here to very close to the Parkfield section. The Parkfield section here is the locked area. The creeping section of the San Andreas Fault is an area of the plate boundary that kind of creeps along without having any, you know, main big earthquake, although it can. But normally we'll see, that's why they call it the creeping section. We'll see slip happen out here instead of a locked event resulting in a big earthquake. But that is active out here today with a number of quakes. There's a couple from yesterday, a couple this morning as well in the 1 range. Nothing big, but it is getting awfully close here to the Parkfield section of the San Andreas Fault, and that area is locked and primed for at least a 6-pointer. And that area of the San Andreas Fault results in of at least a 6.0 earthquake every 20 to 22 years. And the last one was back in 2004. So we are at, 21 years now. And on average, 20 to 22 years, so it could happen. The bad thing here is that there's so much time that has passed since the last big rupture on the San Andreas Fault, the southern branch here, that some people think, and it's possible, technically speaking here, it could result in a sequence of events here with a 6.0 triggering the locked area of the San Andreas Fault. It can happen, guaranteed. When it's right there and when it's strained like it is, oh, it can happen easily. So we do have to watch that. Right now that's cutting short, just a little short there, a few miles short of the Parkfield section as far as that adjustment taking place. Extreme Southern California out here, got a couple earthquakes around the San Andreas Fault, one on the Pacific side, the latest one, and one on the North American side here excuse me, we got that backwards. The latest one going to be down here off the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, North American side of the plate boundary. In fact, it's just off the area that the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, fairly lengthy, extends down here from the Salton Sea northward past this area of the Garlock Fault shear zone up north a little bit. This specific segment right here, little section around the Salton Sea, Cathedral City, and around Banning area, has not had any rupture in over 300 years. The last decent one was mid-1800s or so, as far as the southern branch goes. So this is definitely well primed, but this is even more so. So if this goes, this will most certainly definitely take the entirety. We'll see a full rupture out here of the San Andreas Fault, the southern branch, resulting in an 8.1 when that does decide to go. I don't see that leaving this section off again, out. It's so well primed that it will probably take it with it in one big event. But got a couple twos down there this morning. A lot of smaller microquake activity in the area as well. One earthquake up here near the Sierra Madre Fault Zone for a little 1.0. A little cluster going on here. A little migration along the Imperial Fault northward. I believe this quake here is from, 1 o'clock this morning. There's one from yesterday. Another one from this morning. So we're just on the move out here. It looks like mainly the Bay Area southward getting in on some activity, but I've always said when things are active, we need to be on guard. No further activity there to report across Nevada. I haven't really been watching these seismograph stations all night, been trying to get some sleep, but they're not reporting the 2.5 and below. That's just a fact there. And most of the time, if it's like Nevada or there's one there, but it's hard to believe that there was only just one pointer. For every 3-pointer, you should have a certain amount of 2-pointers out there, and so on. A certain amount of 1-pointers for every 2-pointer. But for now, it looks like everything above 2.5 is being reported out here. But below that, hey, maybe they'll get to it on Tuesday, tomorrow morning. But nothing else being reported there for now. Last earthquake activity was, looks like last night. Yellowstone National Park, nothing shown up there on the models, but we will double check that. If they are working, which they are. Seismograph station right here. This reading right here, those two events look like the 5.0 and the 4.7 that struck out there in Alaska, showing up on the Yellowstone seismograph stations. That would match that time frame here. Couple local events overnight and this morning. Nothing big. And these are probably below 2.5. That's why they are not showing up here on the USGS map. The rest of the country out here, oil fields still getting hit with some earthquakes. One earthquake out in the Tennessee area from yesterday. Aside from that, New Madrid seismic zone looks pretty quiet. Newer activity across the globe. Let's see if we have anything. I'm down here and up along the Middle America Trench is pretty normal for any given day. It's always like that, folks. There's always 2s and 3s happening out there every single day. Pretty active region. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. There's the earthquake activity in Afghanistan from yesterday. Newer activity, it's pretty noticeable. Definitely up here along the extreme northern end of the Pacific Plate. So we'll definitely watch that. That's got some serious potential up there. Just because Alaska, well, the 8.1 that happened back in 2021 was much further over here along a certain other segment here of the Aleutian Trench. But pretty much this area northeastward here is a region of concern. So watch that closely. All right, Puerto Rico Trench, what do we got out here? Got a couple earthquakes directly on it. Some force stirring up from yesterday and today. This area is highly dynamic and set up for some mega quake activity as well. I know it all sounds like doom and gloom, but you know, anywhere there's a major subduction zone region can result in mega quake activity out here. Very dynamic planet that we live on. But without the dynamics here, it'd be pretty boring. You know, we do have some beautiful mountains and whatnot, volcanoes resulting, you know, from the subduction of the plates out here. But we also have to live with the natural hazard and disaster part of it as well. This region up here is looking pretty active. There's a 4.4 early this morning around the Dominican Republic. Keep an eye on this area. There's a couple different trough zones out here, subduction areas. All right, let's see. New Zealand. Not a whole lot of newer activity there from last night. It does look like there's a deeper quake underneath North Island here, maybe towards the southern end of the Kermadec Trench, or maybe the northern end here of the Hikurangi subduction zone. We've got some deeper activity on the globe there this morning. Let's check out Hawaii real quick, see if anything else is going on, then we'll double check space weather. Deformation data at the Kilauea volcano shows that we're still going up. This is the electronic tilt inflation chart there at the Kilauea summit. And we're getting close, I would say. Here's the last several episodes of eruptions. Here's the eruption when it happened. Of course, depletion of the magma resulting in a down here on the graph. And then we're going back up. So we're close. I mean, if you look here, we're above a couple previous levels there. Not the last two, but I guess we'll see what happens here. Either way, we could be getting close. We'll have to watch that. Real quick glance here at the next close approach asteroids here to the planet. Got this one coming in here, it looks like today, 710,000 miles for a 24-foot bus-size asteroid. Really not all that big of a deal. That's pretty safe there with that distance. Everything else out there fairly safe as well. So for space weather activity, tonight, like I say, a decent night there for some aurora activity. This view line is going to be a little bit lower here because this is just showing the KP index of 6. We're expecting up around the 7 or so, a G3 class range. On a scale of 0 to 5, we got these guys showing at G2, but it's technically peak is going to be G3 with this time period here between 0.6 and 0.9. But technically any time here after dark. Just got another report here of an earthquake in Alaska. A 3-pointer up here, it looks like. That was at 11:38, so just a few minutes ago. I tell you what, we definitely got to watch this area, folks. It's looking quite active. If these continue or to increase, say we get multiple 4s, then that's a little unusual to see that many 4s for an aftershock sequence from a 5. So that's why I say these could very well be foreshocks. All right. But anyway, space weather activity, we'll watch that tonight, see if it comes about. I may go out there myself and look. So we'll check for that. G3, no major solar flares right now happening, but this activity tonight, the aurora activity, is a result of long-duration M flare that struck over here 2 days ago. Taking a couple days to get here, right? I don't see any sign of it stirring up right now. Otherwise, the current wind speed here would go off the chart. And the density obviously would be elevated as well. So this is going to take, it'll probably arrive a little bit later towards the evening time tonight. A couple days. Unlike a big event here back in 1859, looks like we're on the anniversary there, September 1st, of the Carrington event. That was a huge swarm, or a huge solar storm there, resulting in some interesting activity. Something like that today I think would be pretty crazy. That was around an X45 or an X80 class, potentially even higher. I don't think we've seen anything similar to it, although they mentioned here that the October, when was that there? Similar events right here. Oh yeah, the March 1989 geomagnetic storm knocked out power across large sections of Quebec. We just barely missed a Carrington class superstorm on July 2020. Remember back last year we seen auroras down here in Northern California as well. That was pretty decent. That was a result of multiple large flares and subsequent CMEs are directed. But something like a Carrington event would be pretty crazy. Back when that happened, they were using telegraphs there, and you had to hook it up to a battery because certain people were getting shocked out there when they were trying to place a message during that solar storm. So they disconnected the batteries and they were still able to communicate. See, this person here, Boston, said, mine is disconnected and we are working with the Aurora current. How do you receive my writing? Better than with our batteries on. Current comes and goes gradually. Crazy to think that everything was working without batteries. It just goes to show you how crazy space weather can affect, electricity and currents and whatnot here on the planet. But, whether we see something like that here near term, you just never know. Got to have a super dynamic sunspot. Not going to be anything like that tonight. We're just looking at a G3 class storm. Let's take a look here at the sunspots complexity model. Still looking at this region back over here, still fairly complex. Looks like it's starting to die off a little bit, but we still got some X-flare potential maybe from one of these sunspots out here. I don't see anything of any super awesome complexity structure, but 65% chance here for M-flare, X-flare around 20% chance or so. And we'll just kind of watch things here and see how it goes. 70% chance there for a proton event. By the way, protons look like they're gone for now, but they could come and pick up once again. All right, I got to get outside here. I just put a huge brisket on the barbecue smoker, so I got to get out there. I think I smell it. I don't want to burn that. We'll catch you guys out here a little bit later on this evening for the Monday night update. Take care, folks.